I'm Dr. Sarah Dunlop. I'm the author of Doing Theology with Photographs, and I'm the lecturer in practical theology at Ridley Hall. Often we think of theology as something we read or write about or think about. And theology is, of course, all those things. But what if theology is something we imagine or we have an intuition about? I think that when we're talking about knowledge of God, it's important to embrace the mystery that comes with that pursuit. My theory is that we know theology through our emotions and our experiences, and all of these different aspects of our everyday lives add up to how we can know about God. But the question is, if you want to know what people's lived theology is, how do you find out? As soon as you ask them to say it out loud or write it down, it becomes cognitive. It becomes something they've reasoned and decided upon and articulated. Now, that is, of course, a legitimate way of doing theology, listening to people. It's really important. But I think that photographs can help us come toward understanding how theology functions in the way people sense their way through life. So, there are several ways of using photographs to study the theology of a place or people group. One of the ways is a bit like documentary photography. It's when we take a camera and walk around an area in which we're interested. So it could be a town or a city, it could be a church building or a university building or, a football club. There are lots of different really interesting things that we can learn just through paying attention to what's happening in the spaces in which people live. And with an eye toward theology, we can spot all kinds of interesting things happening around us. Another way that photographs can help us is to be interested in the photographs that people already have in their possession. People use photographs in a variety of ways in their everyday lives, and these can be open books into their meaning-making processes. One time, I interviewed young people about the photographs that they put on their walls. I was interested not only in their spiritual yearnings and meaning-making, but in how they conceived of that meaning-making as an aspect of their identity. So within their student accommodation blocks, the way they decorated their walls was really important to how their friends conceived of them. And then I interviewed the young people about these photographs, asking, why do you have this one on your wall? Is there anything that you'd like to put on your wall but you haven't yet? Are there any of these pictures that you're a bit embarrassed about or that you're proud of? Sometimes the way I work is perhaps with a group of people, I will provide photographs. So there's quite a power in doing this because it means people are hit anew by photographs they've never seen. They can also be quite perplexed by photographs they've never seen. So there can be some drawbacks to this approach as well. It's important to choose good photographs to work with. And I have several ideas about different types of groups of photographs that are useful for this kind of exercise. But what I might do is take the photographs and lay them all out on a table and encourage my participants to look through the photos, allow their eyes to gaze upon the photos. And as they look with curiosity and interest, a photograph to begin to speak to them. And I usually choose a topic. So most recently, I asked a group of students to think about what the world might be like if there was no sin. And they spent a good deal of time looking at the photographs and then choosing one that spoke to them, somehow resonated in their heart. And I gave them all a Post-it note and asked them to write a title and a short description of why this photograph spoke to them. So in this photograph, the student called it Captured Closeness. And the description says, this is all about relationship, a silent, embodied togetherness. And so here, this is revealed that for this student, sin is something about broken relationships and a fracture between people. And this photograph spoke to them about the possibility of a world without sin. And it's embodied here in the closeness of the two faces portrayed in the photograph. So off the back of this, we can learn about people's ideas about sins and about their hopes for a world without sin. And it even gets students thinking and considering their own conceptions about sin in ways that they never may have talked about it before. So for me, it's quite important to combine the photograph with the person's interpretation of it. I don't think this in and of itself is enough to convey a world without sin, although we can all imagine what might be meant by it. But I think it's important for the person working with the photograph to have that freedom and that voice to interpret it for themselves and for everyone else. And that's how we learn. And the photographs become a bridge between people, and they show me, the researcher or the lecturer, something about what's going on in the minds of someone else. Their own categories for meaning are revealed through this process. Another way is something that's been called PhotoVoice or narrated photography. So I asked a group of students to take photographs of what was sacred to them in their life. One student took this photograph and she explained how she had invited someone she recently met over to have dinner together. And she prepared the food and waited and waited and waited, and the person never came. And so she sat down to eat her plate of food by herself. And in that moment, she realized that what was sacred to her was eating with other people. She called it alone. So what I did was I collected from her and all the other students' stories that went with the photographs. And I took an excerpt from their interviews and exhibited them alongside the photographs. So she said, what is meaningful to me is community and being together and spending time together. I took this picture to show the lack of what is meaningful to me. When you eat alone, you realize, God, how lonely I am. How loud is the fork when it touches the plate? I don't like it. So this quote with her title went together. Now this is quite important for me because this differentiates photography as an art form from the theology that I'm working to do, because I think it's important the person who's taken the photograph narrates and interprets the photograph for us to communicate something of what's going on theologically in someone's life.